Welcome to Stocks to Watch, where we spotlight the companies shaping the future of global markets. And today we're turning our attention to a critical mineral that plays a major role in aerospace, defense, and industrial manufacturing: tungsten. We're joined by two key voices from American Tungsten, newly appointed CEO Ali Haji and President Murray Nye. They're listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange as TUNG, the OTCQB as DEMRF, and the Frankfurt Exchange under RK9. American Tungsten is really on a mission to revitalize domestic tungsten supply and unlock value for shareholders. So without further ado, I'd like to begin by welcoming both of you to Stocks to Watch.
Thank you, Ashley.
It's nice to be here again.
Yes, always a pleasure, Murray and Ali. I would like to congratulate you on your new role. So let's dive a little bit deeper. What really inspired you to take on the position of CEO at this pivotal time for the company? And also, can you share your vision for American Tungsten moving forward?
Absolutely. American Tungsten has a very seasoned team. That was one of the bigger draws for me. The fact that it's in a critical metal space, which is ever increasing in importance today, also was a big draw for me. I've been surrounded by the space over the last year or so. I think the current environment in terms of trade tariffs and export restrictions from the major manufacturers on the planet also incentivized me primarily to join the company. In terms of my vision, I think it's sort of three-pronged. The first would be to market. I think we need to bridge the valuation gap that exists between American Tungsten and our peers. We've got to execute on value creation and a path to revenue generation through production. And last but not least, look to grow our resource, potentially at IMA, as well as potential M&A targets as well.
Well, terrific. Thank you for that, Ali. And Murray, selecting a CEO is really a major decision. So what gave you the confidence that he's the right person to lead the company into the next chapter? And now with him focusing on capital markets and strategy, what will your own key priorities be as president, Murray?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Ashley. I met Ali a couple of times now in Toronto, and very impressive young fellow. I enjoyed meeting him, and so when it was brought to our attention that he might be a good candidate for CEO, I thought, that might make some sense here. So him and I have had several discussions along with our technical team. I can tell that Ali's a seasoned veteran in this area. He's got a good background in mining. He's been very successful in his endeavors in that area. And it's very, very hard to put a project into production. It's one thing to be an explorer
Mm-hmm.
and go down that road, but it's a completely different kettle of fish when you actually want to try and put something into a revenue generating state. So that is something that I'm impressed with Ali. He's got that background. He's also got a very good knowledge of the capital markets. He's got a lot of inroads in the United States. I think eventually this company needs to migrate to the U.S. markets. I think he's a good candidate for that. He's got lots of contacts. I think he'd be a very good asset to the company, and he'll do very well. And I'm very confident in his abilities. So really glad to have him on the team.
Fantastic. And, talking about the United States, talking about critical minerals, talking about the importance, especially with the current administration, I'd love it, Murray, if you can just expand a little bit on that and sort of what your key priorities will be as president now with the company and that focus.
I think, my key priorities, I think, will be on the asset itself.
Mhm.
I've got a lot of background in the United States and in particular in that area, like the Montana, Idaho, call it Nevada, that western part of the United States. I've got a lot of good contacts there. Very familiar with permitting. So I think I could take on that role and help advance the asset.
Mm.
I'm very, very comfortable with our team. We've got a very good mining engineer by the name of Dave Sabran. We've discussed different possibilities as far as how we prosecute this property going forward. We're in a very fortunate position that we have all the historic data from the previous operators. I think we can very quickly transition some of that into a historic resource that we could take a serious look at. And I was talking with Ali the other day, and I said we're like kids in a candy store. I mean, there's so many things on this property to look at. We've got this big moly system in the valley, let's call it. We've got some very good drill results that area, as well as very, very high grade tungsten values.
Mhm.
Roughly about 800 feet below surface. Triple the values that we see historically. So we've got lots to do there, and there's we need the ability to raise money, and I think Ali will be a great asset in that area, and we've got a good technical team that I think I can be very helpful in interfacing the team with Ali and coming up with a plan that we can move this thing forward and create
Terrific.
that value that we're talking about.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And thank you for that and mentioning those beautiful states that you're working in and just the importance of tungsten in general. Let's talk about next steps, Ali. What are the next milestones and key objectives you're targeting right now?
I think, Murray touched on them a little bit there in terms of the resource estimate. That is
Mhm.
of utmost importance. We'll also work on the 43-101. I think it's important to have the technical documents in place that allow us to ultimately move to production. In terms of exploration, we're looking at upside there with respect to growing our resource currently at Lima. We'll do some bulk sampling, water sampling, and start to commence the permitting path that we do need to go undertake in order to come to production. And then, of course, there is a capital markets requirement. So my requirement today, I think, we've got enough in the treasury to get us going, get us started. But we are sitting at a valuation today that is significantly less than our peers on a relative basis. Marketing the company, ensuring that people understand that valuation gap, and then ultimately bringing in capital to allow us to execute on those value creation opportunities. So there's a lot of work to be done. It's an exciting asset. And as Murray has said, the team is fantastic. Between Dave, Austin, Murray, I think we're in really good technical hands.
Yes, and speaking of a fantastic team, I'll ask you, Murray. Would you say that you and Ali, and together with the rest of these amazing people that you work with, can really deliver greater value to the company and its shareholders than either of you could individually?
Yeah, I'm sure we can. Ashley, that the one thing I've learned in this business is the key to being successful is to hire people smarter than you are.
Hmm.
And I've been very, very fortunate in that. I've been able to engage with some very talented people throughout my career, and I'm eternally grateful for those opportunities. The one thing I think that and I'm not an ego type person. I'm more than happy to sit back and try and contribute where I can. But I think if we can get the right people on in play, I think that is the major thing that we need to accomplish as a junior miner. My thinking on this is that it's very, very critical that a startup company like ours has the right people, because otherwise you'll lose a lot of money very, very quickly.
Hmm.
I know that I've financed these things in the past, and I know where the pitfalls are. So, whenever I've looked at situations like this, I try to hire very, very good people all the way down the road.
And it sounds like you are absolutely there right now with Ali by your side. So I will ask both of you, why is now the right time for investors to really take a close look at American Tungsten and what makes it such an attractive investment opportunity outside of everything that you've already mentioned today? I'll start with you, Ali.
Sure, one of the sort of key drivers here from a value perspective is the fact that it's not a greenfield asset. There is a ton of historical work by the Bradley Corporation, Inspiration Mining. If you look at us from a comparative basis, as I mentioned earlier in the interview, we are trading at a significant discount relative to our peers, given the prospective tonnage that we might have, including the resource we might have, the infrastructure that's already in place relative to anybody else that's just starting up. So it is a startup, as Murray highlighted, but we do have enough foundational support based on the infrastructure that has been put in place in the past. It's a new story. We've only been public for less than a year now. There's a lot of potential. We've got to go out and tell the market. We're keen on getting started on value generation and value creation. So we're just getting started, and that's why I think American Tungsten is an extremely attractive investment opportunity.
And Murray?
I think I really agree with Ali's comments, and the other thing that I can add to that is the fact that we have this asset. When you look at the landscape out there in North America, I can't see a more positive situation as far as a mining property, historic information, all the boxes you need to check in the right location, with the right people now in place, that you could point to a better situation as far as getting something actually into production. Most of these things are at least 2 years out. I've looked at a few that are pretty good assets, but you've got a water discharge problem that's going to take 2 years to solve at least.
Right.
You've got grade problems. I think two things are going to happen in the market. I think one, that the price of tungsten will rise. I think it just has to, and I think we've got, I would say, the best situation in the United States as far as getting something into production pretty quickly. I haven't seen anything better. There's a couple of situations in Canada that look very interesting as well, but we've certainly got a piece of the puzzle ready to go as far as tungsten supply is concerned.
Certainly, and in the US, so critical. Timing is everything, and what a terrific time right now to be doing what you're doing. And I just want to highlight, having worked for the federal government, the importance of tungsten and its role in society. So I think people understand that, and this story is only going to get bigger. So we wish you the best of luck. Ali Haji, CEO, and Murray Nye, President of American Tungsten. As you heard, with renewed leadership and a strategic focus on critical mineral development and a clear path toward growth, this certainly is a company with its sights set on becoming a key player in the tungsten supply chain. I so appreciate your time. Thank you both for joining us here on Stocks to Watch.
Thank you, Ashley.
Nice being with you again.